Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen. And well, we've been talking about Australia for years, and guess what? It continues in the domino effect on a world stage of this global financial crisis that we are entering into, and have been entering into for quite some time now, as this article out of news.com.au says, focus on Parliament after RBA's last desperate move. And I have to mention, like, we were talking recently in, I believe it was Hartford, Connecticut. We've been in a lot of places lately. And John and I were talking about, you know, how they lowered interest rates to about 1.5%, which was a huge news story that we had to get out, because obviously what it entails is that, you know, the whole system, they're starting to get desperate. They're like, oh, we can't artificially push these interest rates up any longer. We got to drop them out. And obviously it led, I think, about a week later to Jerome Powell at the Federal Reserve talking about lowering interest rates as well, which led to gold skyrocketing as well as crypto. But I have to mention, it doesn't end there, because it turns out the RBA has lowered interest rates again, and they are in a very tricky situation. So I'm just going to get into this article for you guys, and then we'll get into it with John. And it says, analysis. The Reserve Bank has now disarmed itself with another cut in official interest rates for the second month in a row. It has nothing left in its arsenal to stimulate an economy in need of pep. The critical question now is who will step in to fire up the economy to boost wages and employment and the consumer spending needed for business growth. The immediate spotlight will be on all the banks which are being urged to follow the RBA's lead and give customers the benefit of official rates being reduced to the historic low of 1%. But the broader focus will be the government and the opposition as the tax debate becomes the defining post-election contest in Parliament. And you see a bunch of worried faces there in the photos, obviously. And it goes on to say, this largely political clash will occur with the clear signal from the central bank that things are crook with the economy. There's a term we don't use in this part of the world. When the coalition was in opposition just over 6 years ago, Shadow Treasurer Joe Hockey said interest rates under Labour of 2.5% were beyond emergency levels, which would make the current 1% the mark of a catastrophe. Both the government and Labour will argue tax cuts are needed as economic revitalizers, giving more cash to ordinary wage earners who at the moment are too scared to spend. And by one calculation, the first stage of the government's three-stage $158 billion package could have twice the impact of the latest rate cut. The difference between the two tax viewpoints is that Labour will insist the government package be modified to bring on the tax reductions for low and middle income earners faster than scheduled, and to put off the third stage until the economic outlook is brighter, or dump it completely. The government has rightly booked in a victory eventually for an unmodified tax strategy, but that victory will be won to a sharpened question of the Morrison government's economic competence and appreciable uncertainty about the short and medium term future. As government ministers repeat, a strong economy is needed to create the 1.5 million jobs in 5 years, allow 250,000 additional small businesses to start in the next 5 years, and pay for essential and important services while producing a budget surplus. The problem is the economy is not strong. The RBA told us that today as it fired the last shot in its locker. So I want to break this down a bit with you, John. I first want to mention that they mentioned Morrison, like he is in charge of this and he's a cause. It's much bigger than Morrison. It was much bigger than Turnbull before. It's much bigger than any leader. It's all about how the economy is propped up on debt and pushing people into a dependency, printing currency out of thin air, enforce usury, legal tender laws, and creating vast amounts of poverty and inflation. And I also want to mention that they say that a strong economy is needed to create the 1.5 million jobs in 5 years, allow 250,000 additional small businesses to start in the next 5 years, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, allow these businesses. The state and the banking system, these massive entities, these cartels, are the reason in the first place that these businesses are having such a hard time to start up because they cannot compete on the free market due to vast unfair advantage to major monopolies propped up by the government and the banking system via taxes, regulations, and licenses, as well as the scourge of inflation itself. So when I hear allow, it's so absurd. They just keep fighting fire with fire. John, what do you think this means? What is happening in Australia?
Well, in Australia, the economy has completely collapsed, Josh. That's what's happening, and of course, the housing industry has taken a severe hit in many major cities. Now, what is also happening with the big housing boom that was now they're coming out a lot of big high-rise buildings that people actually have to get out of and not evacuate, but actually they have to leave it, and they lose all their money. In a lot of these buildings that were built, there are massive cracks developing because there was a massive boom. Everybody just built up like super fast and nobody cared about quality or anything. And of course, that's what happens in any of these major booms is you got to have a lot of garbage happening. When you throw a whole bunch of free money out to everybody, you're going to have a lot of terrible investments and terrible assets that will come out of that. And of course, that's what you're seeing in Australia right now with the collapse of their whole monetary system. And with, of course, the interest rate cut that they had in Australia. And what is interesting, Josh, what we actually got to see in Australia is they haven't actually raised interest rates at all in Australia. They have been cutting interest rates, and it was a big pause from about mid-2016 till about 2019 now, mid-2019, where there was just straight interest rate at 1.5%, as you can see on the chart that I'll show you here. But what happened is now they dropped it, 0.5% over just about a month or so. And they're really desperate because what's interesting with Australia, they never, as I said, they never raised the interest rates with every other country around the world, which a lot of countries haven't even raised them that much. That's a problem with these central banks. They're trying to manipulate, but now they were in such a detrimental problem that they couldn't raise the interest rates super fast because it'll collapse the economy at an instant. So they tried to do it slow, but now what has ended up happening is that the Fed is at 2.5, Canada is, believe, at 1.75. All of them are stuck because they raised the interest rate, but they couldn't raise them fast enough to manipulate them down again.
Well, John, what do you think this entails then going forward when you have these countries that have historically low interest rates and they're entering into a crisis? I mean, what can they do about this at this point?
Well, you have what you saw that they were talking about, building a whole bunch of businesses, getting businesses up and running in the country. Well, you can mitigate the hit in the economy by slashing taxes to near zero. Well, that's not going to boast well for the government. That's going to go bankrupt, right? So that is a solution to all of this, which is not of course, a final fix of it. It's just a band-aid to prolong the fiat currency system in Australia. But that is what could be done. Of course, you could just keep on printing money. And that's what we're probably going to see, Josh, is a massive more amount of printing currency. And that's what you've seen around the world, like in Canada, other places where they're talking about getting a ton of immigrants into the country to fix they're saying to get immigrants in to get the jobs, but also what they need desperately to prop up the debt fiat interest rate system by getting more and more debtors into the Ponzi scheme. And that's why you're seeing the push for all this immigration into Europe, especially Germany, Canada, even the UK and others. They're desperately trying to get more people so they can get more people and keep this Ponzi scheme afloat.
Actually something you mentioned there is really important, John, because I've been thinking a lot about way back when. I mean, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And looking at, obviously nothing against women working, but let's remember why women were pushed into the workplace in the first place. The state and Edward Bernays tactics, propaganda, etc., they pushed women into the workplace so that they had more people to tax and more people to be desperately working until death, basically, for the state, like a cattle on a farm.
Yeah, no, 100%, Josh, and that's exactly what happened. Is they needed. Let me tell you a story about my wife's dad when he was younger. He was probably in his 30s, 40s. He had a single job, keeping his wife was at home raising the kids. They had got three kids. My wife's two sisters and her. And they actually had a fine childhood. Nobody was poor. They actually had money, and that was one person, being able to contribute to the whole household, which it just shows you how insane it was. And this push with equality and everything, yeah, it's great for women to like work as well if they want to, but the problem was that push came because of the need of getting the Ponzi scheme, keeping it going, because it was really strong in 1971 when Nixon took the U.S. off the gold standard. That was kind of the final blow. Everybody thought that would be the end, but the problem is they added a lot of people, a lot of women into the workforce, so that they were able to keep the whole system afloat for a little bit longer.
Right.
But,
so, John, what you're saying is not that controversial. I mean, really, it comes down to the fact that you raise taxes, you raise inflation, you cause people to work harder nonstop, 24/7. They're less happy. I mean,
it's going 2 or 3 or 4 jobs.
Yeah, the middle class gets destroyed. I mean, that makes perfect sense, and that's exactly what we're seeing happen, and it makes sense because the government and the banks depend on the debt of the populace, and I say it a million times here at WAM. If they shove you down a bottomless pit of debt, you are forced to ask for a ladder up from the government and the banking system, pushing you into perfect poverty. But John, moving on though, what comes next for Australia? I mean, what should people in Australia that are watching, I think they're our third biggest audience here at WAM, is the Australian people. What should they know going forward as far as sustaining their own ability to preserve wealth and to stay afloat as, you see these places like Sydney, Melbourne, and, Perth. You could go across the board in Australia. There's housing bubbles,
all the
there's a
major
debt bubble.
cities
It's
have
crazy.
housing price crisis.
Yeah, what do you think?
No, I think we're gonna be in for more collapse in the housing market. They can't put these band-aids on trying to cut interest rates. They're gonna not be able to cut it enough. They're gonna go down to zero. Who knows? Maybe they have a cashless system available that Bank of Canada have their Project Jasper. Maybe there's something there that they have a blockchain cash system that's getting implemented as the whole system fails.
Well, they're certainly trying that, John. I mean, in Darwin, they got the smart grid that they're trying to install. They got facial recognition passports. I mean, they're really going in that direction.
Oh, 100%, and that's where the future goes. If we are not wanting to stop it and actually calling the elites out that wants more control, that wants you can call it the beast system. For people that have read the Bible, this was predicted because tyranny comes from the creation of government in itself, and the government just slowly grow and grow and grow, and then it comes to the point where it becomes so huge that it becomes either tyrannical or collapses in on itself. And I really hope that it will collapse in on itself and not become severely tyrannical like what happened in China with the social credit system, where now people could just pay with their facial recognition. They don't even need an iPhone or nothing. So you could get to that point in Australia because they
hopefully people don't build it back up.
Yeah, but the way to protect yourself, and this of course our opinion, but I'm just reciting almost historical facts here, is that you should really look into protecting yourself with the ultimate wealth insurance, which is gold and silver. And of course, the bank, the Reserve Bank of Australia is doing the total opposite, Josh. And they're selling their gold. They sold over 11 tons since 2016, when the crisis really started to unfold, like behind the scenes. And you're going to see continuously sell-off of the gold. Maybe you could go and buy all the gold from the stupid central bank out there. That might be a smart move. And then, of course, there's other ways to protect yourself. Like now we're seeing, there was just a recent announcement about a potential smaller country looking at backing their currency with Bitcoin. And I think that's where we're going. Remember, I've been talking a couple of years ago where I said, we're soon going to see a central bank have reserve assets in cryptocurrency. And I seriously believe that will happen as the
I don't
central
agree
banks.
with it, but I think it's something that can happen.
No, but yeah, because they're desperate. They're trying to fix their failed, flawed system, and they're just desperate to try to do anything to try to fix it. But of course, it's not going to get fixed that way. But what you're going to see is Australians will need to, of course, know that their house is not an asset. But that was the major problem, is everybody in the middle class usually, and this is like everywhere. It's not just Australia. Everybody believes that their house is an asset. They could retire on it. So when they get old, they could just sell their house, or they could just do a reverse mortgage, which is now blowing up in Canada. The reverse mortgages, people can't afford to now pay back the new mortgage that they put on their house, the retirees. So you're seeing an existential crisis of a grand scale here, where the whole monetary system is basically failing. And of course, gold is at a record high in Australian dollar terms. We can't forget to mention that as well. So I think what you need to do, you need to get out of the banking system. The banking system is probably one of the most dangerous places to be. And then if you are going to go into crypto, please make sure that you are not holding a whole bunch of money in a exchange, because just recently, Josh, I don't know if you knew this, but Bitcoin Norway, which was an exchange, just faltered. They had Bitcoin stolen through another white label exchange that they had, and they were saying that, oh, we're selling off the Bitcoin. No, they never had that Bitcoin. That was stolen. They're lying to all the Norwegians. So make sure that you have it in your own private wallet, where you have your own private keys. It's so important. And then, of course, take a look at my report if you go to theeconomictruth.org, you can buy my report directly there and download it and take a look at that, because I went into great detail, 59 pages expose of the whole entire economy of Australia. I just didn't, call out all the problems. I actually came up with a 2-page solution at the end of different things that you could do to mitigate and probably protect yourself. Of course, that's all my opinion. But again, the history tells us so much different things about what will happen.
Absolutely. It's there's more solutions than there are problems. And you mentioned the exchange in Norway, and I just did a video a few days ago called Warning Exit Scam Alert. Another crypto exchange runs away with people's money. And guess what? It wasn't the Norwegian one. But nonetheless, it's one of the many places or many exchanges that are doing this very same thing. This is why people need to decentralize. It all comes down to self-sustainability, food, water, shelter, self-defense. You're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block. Look at what John has gone into: gold, silver, cryptocurrencies that are properly decentralized, and of course, the shark-infested waters, the sharks in the shark-infested waters surrounding the beautiful prison island of Australia. They're hungry. Send the bankers, the politicians, not the impoverished. I think, guys, we're moving into this new system outside of the old system, and we need to adapt to it. We need to build on it. We need to produce for it. We need to innovate it. We need to build on the blockchain. We need to preserve our wealth. We need to do whatever we can to escape the government and the banking system. And I think we will be successful. I'm optimistic, but nonetheless, there's ways to go still as the system collapses. People don't all have to be on the same page and all have to agree with you. You just have to, replace this old system with something convenient like the totalitarians do, but with something convenient that works for the freedom of all mankind and the peace of all mankind, rather than this totalitarian 1984 cash-it technocratic hellhole that's being unrolled right now. So anyway, as we close it off, make sure to check out www.anarchovegas.com for the upcoming Anarcho Vegas conference in Las Vegas, Nevada, July 21st. Tickets online, use promo code WAM, W-A-M, to save 10% on your tickets. The Winnipeg Crypto Conference, if you're around Canada, is also happening. So we will have a link below for that as well. Use
it's
promo code
the
WAM.
same code. Yeah, exactly. Same code.
Yeah, use promo code WAM and save money. And as always, check out our Subscribestar, GoFundMe, Patreon, Bitcoin, all those, because we need your help more than ever, as YouTube has been Well, the gauntlet's coming down. We're having a really hard time reaching people. They're making sure to shadow ban us to death, and we will not go without a fuss, and we will not leave you guys, those that watch us, support us, help us get through all these years spreading information for free. It is more important than ever to help independent media. If not us, Press for Truth, We Are Change, News to Share. There's so many other incredible independent medias out there that you can help, but one way or another, we cannot do it without you, and obviously we need to win this information war, so we can't do it without the help of the viewers that appreciate our work. So again, we have Subscribestar, where we will have subscriber only content, Patreon, GoFundMe, Bitcoin, etc., etc., etc. We really appreciate it, guys. Until next time, thanks for joining us, John. This is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here at WAM, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon, we can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we're so heavily demonetized and censored and shadow banned. It's getting really bad, folks. If everyone just gave $1 single a month to say Patreon or our Subscribestar, where we do subscriber only content, we could really get out of this rut that we are currently in as YouTube tries to stifle independent media and prop up the mainstream media. This is really important. This is one of the most important times in independent media history for us to say it's now or never. Let's keep moving forward and let's be that change that we wish to see in the world. Of course, there's also our Bitcoin address below as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And of course, we got events coming up, so make sure to check us out at anarchovegas.com. Anarchovegas.com. Use promo code WAM, that's WAM, for a 10% discount on your tickets. It's on July 19th, 20th, and 21st in, of course, Las Vegas, Nevada. That's anarchovegas.com. Make sure to check us out there and find us on websites like BitTube and Minds, and just try to support independent media, if not myself, any of the other big independent medias out there, to help us continuously bring our message to you free of charge so that we can really change the guard as we move forward into a dramatically polarized, crazy future. Let's try to make it as sustainable as possible. It comes down to you guys. You are the change you wish to see. You guys will help us get through these tough times. So anyway, check out all those links, and until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.
Bye.